Welcome to Sports Geek, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host who loves diving into the business of sports, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. I'm Sean Callanan, and welcome to another episode of Sports Geek, episode 354. And I do love analysing the data behind sports business, and that's what I'll be doing in today's episode with GM Ciallella. He's the digital marketing manager at the Anaheim Ducks in the NHL. I think you really enjoy the chat with GM as we do geek out a little bit. If you love your digital marketing and all the different products that are available, I think you're really going to like this episode. You might be listening to this episode on your favourite podcast player. It might be on Apple, it might be on Spotify, it might be on my favourite Pocket Casts, but it is also available at sportsgeekhq.com. You can find all the episodes, all 354 episodes. If you haven't listened to every one of them, you can always dive back into the back catalogue. There are topics for everyone across the sports business, whether it's like today, talking about digital and marketing. People are in the technology space. There's episodes there. There's also episodes around major events and organising major events or stadiums. Whether you're working for a team or a league, I often joke that the Sports Geek podcast is for my past clients, current clients, and future clients. So hopefully you'll be one of those cohort in the very near future. As always, you can always reach me at Sean Callanan on most platforms, or use email if you would like, Sean at sportsgeekhq.com. I love hearing back from listeners, whether it's just feedback on the episode, feedback on a particular guest, or, like I said, if you would like some help with what you're trying to do across the digital space, whether it be helping you sell tickets, helping build your channels, helping be creating more sponsorable properties. That's exactly what we do here at Sports Geek, and that's why we've got Digital to Dollars. But let's get stuck into this chat with GM Ciallella. He's the digital marketing manager for the Anaheim Ducks. Very happy to welcome GM Ciallella, and again, I hope I'm getting that name right, digital marketing manager for the Anaheim Ducks. GM, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Oh, that's very, always love having listeners come on the podcast to have a chat, find out what you're doing. You've listened to the podcast, so you know what the first question is going to be. Like, how did you get your start in the world of sports?
I started educationally, really. I went to school at Concordia University in Irvine, California for sports management and marketing, and I was a lacrosse player and ended up getting my master's degree while still playing sports at the university, and that translated into an internship with Sports One Marketing and Warren Moon, who was an NFL Hall of Fame quarterback. And then from there, I needed to pay rent, so the free intern role kind of dissipated pretty quickly there, and ended up finding a job on Craigslist doing digital marketing, and was there for a year. And about the year mark, the Ducks opened a position that was almost identical to what I was doing for a medical billing software company. And as you can imagine, doing this for sports and entertainment, which is what I went to school for, was a bit more exciting than doing this for medical billing software. So, and then I've been here 10 years. My role has grown. My team has grown. Our processes and procedures have grown, but it's been a wild decade.
Exactly. And that's sort of what I want to dive into, because that whole scene, it's a scene that we've been a part of, Sports Geek on that digital side. So much has changed. I probably should ask you, lacrosse in the Olympics in LA 28. You haven't thought about making a comeback?
I actually played for the Italian national team. So if this was 8 years ago, I would have been on that Olympic squad, which is kind of cool when you think about the hard work that we put in, that the Italians put in. The whole world has really put in. The World Games, the World Championships were here in California over the summer. It's an incredible experience, and it's really, people watch Cool Runnings with the Jamaican bobsledders as kind of that feel good moment. We had that same experience with Uganda and a few other smaller countries in terms of sports and athletics, where they got to compete in the world championships when I played for the Italians in 2014. And it was that feel good camaraderie, world come together sort of moment that now everybody gets to be a part of, because it's going to be on this world stage where everybody can tune in and watch it happen. Athletically, I'm probably not fit to compete. I played in an alumni game a few weeks ago, and I don't think we would be winning any games if I put the uniform back on at this point. But I'll stick to beer league hockey, and we'll call it a day.
Nah, that's
but
all
very
right.
exciting that they decided to make that happen.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how all of those new sports, happen at LA 28. Lacrosse is obviously on a bit of an upward trajectory in the US with the professional leagues, and obviously a really strong college game. So it will be interesting. But yeah, we're not here to talk lacrosse, but I wanted to, I guess, touch on that. I did not know that in your intro. So, moving into the Ducks in a marketing coordinator role in that digital space, sort of take us back to that early time. 2013, 2014, 2015. What was marketing, because you're a marketing coordinator, how much of it was what we would call traditional marketing, and some of the ad products and some of those pieces? And then how much of it was it pushing more into the digital and social ad products in that early phase of what your role was?
From my role specifically, it was 100% digital.
Okay.
Departmentally and across the board, it was very much still either 50-50 or more heavy on billboards, traditional advertising, TV spots, things like that. But my role specifically was meant to be mostly email, actually, when I first started here. And even from an email perspective, I would consider that the dark times. Batch and blast type of communications. Everybody gets everything. We pull all the people out of Excel and fire it off. And the whole thing was how many people are on this list, not necessarily how many people are buying from this list. So that was a fun, and honestly, the Ducks in that sense weren't unique. That was sort of how my role was outside of sports, was transitioning from this old school email marketing sort of focus to more hyper focused, smarter, targeted.
Those first couple of steps of that CRM journey, which I think, it gets said a lot on this podcast, where you're right, there was that early time of send out an email blast, because it would just send it to everybody. But this person is 300 miles away. They're not coming to it. No, everybody, because you didn't have that data to do it. So with some of that early stuff, one, effectively getting the job done, doing what you were told, but then starting to, as the tools and the analytics, came in, to start seeing what was working and getting more data so you could be a bit more sophisticated in what you were sending.
Yeah. And that was honestly kind of a hard part, right? As the new green person to the organization who had outside experience sort of in that space, not necessarily brought in to be the tech expert, the software person to make those decisions, but getting into it, the org at the time had made a decision on a software. I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, but it did not work. It was conceptual. It was promised to function in a certain way. The limitations with CRM and how it functioned with what we were trying to do didn't go the way anybody had wanted it to go. And so then it became kind of one of my tasks to help get the org on more sophisticated, nimble software, which we're still using today. It has helped us tremendously, but it was an interesting time where you're taking data and now you're talking data warehouse and all these other pieces, where we were essentially using our ESP as a makeshift data warehouse at one point. And now we're talking data lake, multiple brands, multiple data sets, and all working in unity so that we're not over hitting, over targeting, over messaging people that kind of live across multiple universes within an organization. And it's wild to think that 10 years seems like a long time, but when you're in that moment, it doesn't feel like 10 years is a long time because it feels like we were just taking lists out of Ticketmaster and hitting send on it. So it's been a pretty interesting journey. And the fun part is that it's constantly changing, as you alluded to before. Things that we think are going to happen things that we never thought were going to happen are now, forefront of what we're doing. And there's also sort of a pendulum in technology where for that 2013 to 20, from essentially up to COVID, email was the bread and butter for ticket sales. And we started seeing other platforms kind of come into that mix, smallly, at least to start with. And now some of those areas are leading the charge over email in certain situations.
So I think your story will be familiar to a lot of listeners, being in that spot, whether it's, trying to get the results you want, and it might not be either the tool that might not be able to do it for you, or you don't have the resources. But you've got to tell that story, up the chain, because you have to say, well, this is why we have to go with this tool, or this is why I need extra resources, or I need, someone that's doing, certain graphics for these emails because they're working. How much was, your days on the tools of, getting marketing message out, but it's also that management piece and how to manage that story and sell what your concept is or what you would like, up to management, so you can, get the right tools, get the right resources, tackle the problem that you want to, the way you want to do it. How much in those, again, in those early years, but it's a constant thing to be able to have that really good dialogue with management to say, well, trust me, here's my results, but here's what I want to do. If it does require, a tech change or a tech uplift or an upgrade or more resources, how important has that been as part of your role to be able to keep up with all the changes?
It's been pretty crucial, and I will say our organization, and I can't really compare it necessarily to what other teams or orgs are going through, but our organization here, multiple levels in the hierarchy of employment all meet together and work collaboratively. So I'm lucky enough, and I probably wasn't this way when I first started, right? Nobody at the VC level is going to necessarily care what a coordinator has to say in his first week there. But as I did that work, we did good things with what I was tasked with, and we sort of got to the point of, okay, we need to champion progress, right? I was able to speak to some of those things and those sort of concepts, if you will, of where we need to go with things. And we've gotten to the point now where, I have meetings with the C-level people in our organization because they trust what I have to say. And part of that is showing them, proving that what you have to say matters and actually can help them in what they need to do and what we need to do as an organization. If I had spouted, oh, we're going to do all this stuff, and then I tested it out and it came back and everything flopped, and I don't think I'd have the same audience that I can go to now, and we can discuss strategy and we can discuss how we're using digital to gain new fans and sell more tickets and sell more merchandise, which our small digital team now is tasked with doing all of those things and more. We essentially have gotten ourselves to a point of we're almost an in-house agency of sorts, for better or worse. But part of that is because of the results that we've driven, and proving that what we have talked to in meetings and pitched up the ladder is actually beneficial and effective.
Yeah, and I guess you sort of pointed out in the results, like focusing on, hey, we are selling tickets, we are moving merchandise. Nothing gets the attention of people higher up than a few dollar signs, and realizing that that's working. Like, we love open rates. We love the some of the key stats of what our industry, what our section is, but being able to say, that's what we do with digital to dollars. Say, look, we sent this email and it moved tickets, it moved merch. Was that, again, some of the battles are making sure your content is doing that, but then also the reporting and understanding is, do you think having that focus and looking at the bottom line, again, gets you a conversation at those different tables?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things, and this is probably more of a recent development, but we open up an online team store a couple years ago. And everything that we did on the digital side from ticketing had worked so well since my time here that it was sort of batted around in meetings of, okay, now that we're allowed to market our team store and go to market with some of our products and sell what we sell at the arena online for people who might not be able to make it to the arena or our fans abroad and things like that, can we use some of those same digital strategies we're using for ticketing for our merchandise? And our small digital team sold over a third of the merchandise for that entire season, doing what we do standardly for tickets, but for merchandise. So those dollar signs, as you mentioned, got some eyeballs to the point where like, okay, let's feed the fire. Let's put more dollars and more ad money and more resources behind selling merchandise. And our merchandise team does a great job with product, and we help them sell even more of it using kind of that functionality of proof is in the pudding. Make the dollars work and show people that you can drive results by using smart digital strategies to sell things.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to touch on the e-commerce thing because it is sort of a bit of an uncovered gem for a lot of sports, because a lot of the effort is cheeks on the seats, getting season tickets and single game tickets coming, and e-commerce is sort of either left to a licensee or another vendor, or it's still bricks and mortar. I wanted to ask you around that e-com piece, how much, one is it understanding the different platforms you might be selling on, and I'd be interested in to find out what platforms are the ones that are working well, but then also a mix of, both the product and the creative that you're pitching with the product that, because you're still in the thumb stopping game. You've got to get someone to stop. How's that mix? Because, you've got, iconic, brands, a lot of historic nostalgia, with its Disney origins. So when someone sees Ducks, they see it. But like, how much is it? It's not just a matter of, oh, cool, we've got a new hat, we'll put it up, it's going to sell. How much is it a combination of you guys understanding the platforms and your audiences, but then also, tweaking that creative at the right point to hit your audience?
It's a very healthy mix, I would say. Testing is huge on that. To your point of having that origin story, the Disney marks, I'm wearing it right now.
Yep.
The Mighty Duck brand is very popular. And like I said, our merchandise team and our organization as a whole does a very good job of embracing that in the right moments. It's our 30th anniversary season this year. We have a plum and jade jersey that we're wearing on the ice, and our fans love it. We brought it out for our 20th anniversary season, I think for the first time since it went away when Disney originally sold the team, and the response was massive. And so understanding and doing some testing and using the data and analytics behind traffic and sessions and browsing and product and the exact same things that we do for ticketing, right? Number of eyeballs on event pages or product pages, and how they're getting there, and who's converting and how, and using that to fuel those campaigns and make smarter decisions on how we're going to market, how we're marketing those different items, what lists and audiences are we targeting for various things, and what imagery are we using. For a while, the showing images of our players wearing items in the team store was largely successful because there's a core group of our fans that want to wear what the players wear. And most people think, oh, that's on the ice, they wear jerseys. And sure, we sell a lot of jerseys. In fact, it's one of the most sought after things if you're talking about SEM and searching online for things. People are always looking for jerseys. But at the same time, especially from a younger perspective, a youth perspective, if they see their favorite player wearing a shirt or a hat that we sell in the team store, that creates more of an affinity and a bond between fan base and player that is kind of a cool story. And then obviously the merchandise helps. The more that our team store comes out with new product and such like that it's easier to market. And sometimes the visual of the Mighty Duck does sell very nicely. But it's creating that story. Is it used for, we do specialized merchandise for theme nights, Star Wars night, Dia de Muertos, different elements in the arena that we can create inroads with our community that resonate with fans, and even sort of new fans that didn't know that we did those kind of cultural initiatives and things that people don't normally think of from a hockey perspective, that brings it hits them. It tugs on their strings and it makes them pull out their wallets, which is great.
You talked about sort of, I guess, the launching of the e-com piece. Like before you guys were selling online, there were obviously people who could buy Ducks merch in a bunch of different places. Was the first sort of point of call like sort of doing that, creating that moat? So if someone is searching for a Ducks jersey to find you, so you were talking about, search engine marketing and being sort of being in front of those, some of your keywords and sort of redirecting fans who previously would be going somewhere else because that's where they would. And, people have been trained to go online. And then you say, hey, we're going to really develop our online presence. We want to be the destination. Was there a bit of, I guess, search engine infrastructure and some efforts there to sort of make sure people were coming to you as a destination site?
Yeah. And kind of the origin of that is one of the things that we saw on the ticketing side. Search is a heavy channel that we use for ticketing, but from a brand term perspective, Ducks are firing when they're searching, but it's not necessarily just tickets. It's not just ticketing terms. We noticed a trend of Ducks terminology, merchandise terminology that then ended up in Ticketmaster sales. So we did have an online presence. We just really never, for one reason or another, I can't speak to the legal aspect of it in terms of how the relationship between the league and everything else. But we had an online store, but we weren't really able to promote it. And then something switched and all of a sudden we were able to have it be a presence and promote it more and utilize that. And historically speaking, the main shop site that is run through the league, I think, is where everybody went and or sort of a Fanatics type of landing spot. And so I think one of the nice parts for our fan base is that if we say this is the official merchandise, this is the same stuff you can get from our arena, but you may not have to live close to Honda Center to come buy it. It's different than it's just shop Fanatics or shop NHL or what that looks like. So there was a bit of that keyword element, but really looking at those search terms and figuring out what those traffic pieces were and redirecting, getting in front of the people in those top two spots in search definitely has driven a ton of traffic to our site, because sales is important, but also establishing where people can go. If the first thing that people think of is not our site to buy our merchandise, and that's a problem, right? We want to try to instill that mindset of, I want a Ducks shirt, I want a Ducks hat, I want a Ducks jersey. Okay, we can go to the Anaheim team store online and buy it from the team and not get it from a third party that has no affiliation with us. Even if they're selling licensed merchandise, we want to retain those customers, right? And having that dynamic of ticket buyers and merchandise buyers and mingling, we've done reports on how many people are buying tickets that don't buy merch and vice versa, and trying to merge those two areas to do smarter messaging, collaborative messaging, ticket package messaging, where you could offer a gift card to the team store with a ticket purchase and things like that, because there seems to be a percentage of crossover in that audience or in that market that does one or does the other, but may not do both at the same time. So can you leverage that?
It's amazing. Like, here we are 20 minutes in, but, imagine having that conversation with the marketing coordinator that started 10 years ago. Like, originally it was, hey, we're sending an email out to everyone. And now you're talking about sending an email that someone just bought a ticket, but they haven't bought merch. So we're going to send them, something specifically. And that's where, the evolution comes. You've now got all of these different, I guess, channels that are available to you. Like when you first started, it was like email and email only, but now you've got, all of these different social platforms that have ad platforms available. You've got SEM and everything on the search side. You've got new platforms in TVs. There's real smorgasbord of options from a platform's point of view. How do you take it in that ad landscape and pick and choose, because you can get overwhelmed with choice. How do you when new platforms come on board, is there a process that you do in testing and learning, seeing what works, what product you have, because you've also got a whole bunch of different products that you've got to sell. what product works with platform. How do you go through that process as, you as a marketer, you're getting more and more choice year on year?
Yeah, at one point, I feel like the omni-channel term is going to turn into an infinite channel term.
Yeah.
It just keeps growing and growing and growing to the point where I don't know exactly how many more places you can add, but they will come. That as we've seen historically, um, it's there's I think probably a couple different ways that we look at it, right? And to your point, we started off a little bit siloed and channel. We would kind of dabble in certain areas, but nothing was very connected like it is now. I mentioned it before, but we kind of consider our small digital team considers ourselves an in-house agency because what we do from email translates into SMS, translates into paid social, translates into programmatic display and connected TV and our streamed ads and across the board, right? So we're trying, whether it's manual or automated, we're trying to connect all those dots at the same time to accomplish those goals of putting butts in seats at the various levels of ticketing that we have. First and foremost, we do take time in the off season to sort of evaluate potential new areas of investment from an advertising perspective, and we look at what's been historically successful, how is it trending, can we see that relating in any other way to some of these other newer ventures, these newer avenues that we can market to. And then typically I'll ask for a test spend. I'll ask to carve out a little bit of our ad budget for the year to try it out, and we keep close tabs on it. I pride myself on positive ROAS across the board. If we're not making more money than I'm spending, then first of all, I probably shouldn't be employed, but also, I pride myself in that success because that's the direct reflection on what my team and I are doing, and are we being successful in it. So keeping a close eye on whether tests work or not, and making sure that if we're spending money on testing, that we're also making enough money on the other areas to cover that, so that we're positive across the board, and evaluating those results after, not too short, we can't determine whether those results will go a certain direction, but also not letting it go too long if it's not successful. And there have been areas that were not great, but making sure that we're making those smart decisions based on the data that we're getting back, and then based on those test spends, then increasing budgets the next year to meet that demand, or even asking for overages in some cases where we know we're going to crush it in certain channels. So I don't know if that really quite that answer.
No, it's exactly.
It's
like the return on advertising spend, ROAS, as you said, like having that as a focus and sort of have that as your North Star is absolutely vital, because otherwise you can just put some money over there and it runs and you're like, did it work or not? And if you can't come back with any conclusive, sometimes the tough thing is when there's early ad platforms, they don't give you that data, in a great way. It's really hard to track. So you've got to be able to validate what the ad platform is saying yourself in some other way. It's but it's always something to say, well, if we're going to do this, it has to have a return. How have you, obviously Meta is a evolving ad product and one of the most sophisticated ones, doing things across Facebook, Instagram and other channels. How have you found that, and how have you held onto the sides of the boat as that keeps changing, especially over the past couple of years when all the cookies have been whacked and there's no way, how have you kept up with those changes? Because things that were working and ticking the box in 2016, they're working great, and then a whole suite of changes come through, whether it be forced by Apple or forced by privacy laws. How have you, kept riding what has been relatively a successful product from an ad point of view for a lot of marketers?
Yeah, it's definitely been a challenge, and we've noticed that we've had to shift our mentality and our strategies and our content, even the types of ads we're running, based on those privacy changes, right? Before, you could get third-party data, you could collect information without somebody specifically giving you, their contact information. And now in this day and age, first-party data is king. Not that you didn't want it before, but now it's almost vital to be able to, remarket and target in a certain way. So one of the areas that we've adjusted our strategy a little bit is focusing not necessarily on direct ticket sales, but focusing on lead generation, interactive pieces that people want to sign up for that gets us that first party data, and then kind of sliding in would you be interested in X, Y, and Z at the same time, and taking those leads and either giving them to sales or putting them into marketing campaigns on multiple levels to try and then drive ticket sales after the fact. And it's worked very well for us. That to me is probably the biggest shift, because a lot of those times the direct ticket sales, you can't necessarily target off of that conversion like you used to. You have to do more of the traffic based, metric, and then hopefully your came from codes from Ticketmaster and your Google Analytics UTMs are working correctly so you can evaluate that return effectively, at least to the best of your ability to. But if you're collecting that first party data and then you can move them into channels you have a bit more control over, and see that direct click to purchase result, that to us has been huge. We still run ticket ads directly, and we still do capture that data through Google Analytics and our tracking mechanisms. So we have a pretty good understanding and idea of what works and what doesn't. But that first party data collection to us has been huge, so that we can kind of go back to the well later, and it's not just a fleeting ad that may or may not be clicked on, and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, it's a bit of back to the future. Like, first party data has always been really important, but those changes sort of reinforce that, and it's sort of like it's great having these large audiences on these social platforms, but they're not ours. They're owned by Mr. Zuckerberg, or they're being whatever Elon Musk is doing with Twitter. Like they own those platforms, so it's like it makes sense for us to get that data. And there is that shift. So effectively, it's more of your funnel moved from, I guess earlier it was in the social space and you're building audiences and retargeting, but sort of moving it more into your own house, get that first party data, and then it's follow up with some of your channels, whether that be email or SMS and different means.
I would say if you look at it as a freeway, we're kind of operating on both sides. We're going both directions with it, right? So we're utilizing social platforms like Meta to try and collect that first party data. And Meta is not the only place we put that, but that's kind of one of the main areas, because you can get it from Instagram, you can get it from Facebook. I would say actually our audience probably prefers Instagram to Facebook overall in terms of what we get back. But we're kind of across the board trying to collect that from various sources and then putting it back into our database to then go back out to market from across those different channels. And we're also utilizing our email functionality and our activity from our email marketing campaigns and SMS campaigns to then serve ads to people who interact with those channels that may not directly convert from that, but they took a look at it at least, and hopefully get them back into it later. We send out an offer for a ticket. Did they click on it? Cool. They clicked on it, but they didn't buy it. So let's serve them a specific ad, because they're engaged with us. They engage with that campaign. So we have a higher likelihood to convert them, as opposed to somebody who never opened their email to start with.
Yep. I want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned a couple of times effectively being in agency, an internal agency for the Ducks and servicing different departments. It's a model that, I think it actually can work quite well, but it's still one that takes a lot of stakeholder management. What are the different departments that you service internally?
So the two main ones are ticketing and merchandise on the Ducks side. We have 5 different brands under our main umbrella that didn't exist. Now, I mean, they all existed other than OC Vibe, which is our new development project in Anaheim that we're all very excited about. That's a new one. But in terms of the other ones under our ownership group, we have our minor league team, we have our building events, we have our hockey team, and then we own and operate a number of ice and roller rinks in our community that has sort of their own focus and programming. And so whether it was by design or by default, we started sort of taking what we did on the Ducks side, which over time became sort of smarter and more intelligent marketing tactics, and we kind of shared them across the organization to the point where a lot of stakeholders and those other brands were saying, hey, we would like to do this too. Can you help us get that off the ground? And then what kind of ended up happening was, sure, we can get that off the ground for you. Here, why don't we run this for you? We can work collaboratively and we'll show you how this runs. And then it just kind of stayed with us over time. So we run public skating ads, summer camp ads for our rinks facilities. So we're putting paid dollars behind some of their programming. We're helping them with their email infrastructure and their communication channels. We got our minor league team set up on the same systems that we're using, and we meet with them regularly on communication strategies, and they have the same merchandise platform that we do. So it's a similar kind of effect there with, oh, you guys are crushing it and selling a lot of stuff for your online team store. Can we do the same thing? And so we're meeting with them to try and get them to a level close to where we're at. And that's kind of how it operated. So we consult, I guess, in a way. Anybody, whether it's a building event, our premium seating department, rinks, what have you, if they need some digital help or they need some digital guidance and they may not know internally who is best to ask that, it usually ends up being asked to us. And then whether or not they handle that themselves or they come to us to have us help them, a lot of times it's the latter. We sort of have this, even though we're duck focused, we have this sort of overarching organizational mindset of how can we help everybody that we work with, and how can we raise all boats in this lake that we're in to accomplish similar goals. It's not always ticket sales, it's not always merchandise, but everybody has an objective that can be solved digitally, or at least partially digitally. In my opinion.
And do you work sort of I guess alongside the digital, like the content, the team that's doing content around the Ducks and season launch content and that, which is organic, but you're there behind there from a marketing message and an amplification and the sales focus? Is there do you work in conjunction with them on building out the creative? What does the amplification piece look like?
Yeah, we're very collaborative. Our digital team handles everything outside of organic social and web content. So we're everything paid, everything lead gen across the board, from TV, connected TV. We handle paid advertising, paid social, email, SMS, all that kind of everything that's sort of under that umbrella is sort of our team. And then we have, in our own department, we have people who focus on the more traditional sides of advertising, the billboards and the mall signs and things like that we work collaboratively on, in terms of, are we putting QR codes? Are we putting vanity URLs? Are we putting things on there that are trackable in nature to understand that those are effectively pushing people to our website? Content from the social and website of making sure that links work, that they're tracked effectively, that the social team that's doing organic messaging about some of our initiatives is matching what we are doing on the more paid targeted lead side. And then our graphics team is phenomenal. We do all of our graphics for all the stuff in Ducks in-house. That team pretty much comes up with the general look and feel for the season, and then it's shared across the board, and we all work together to sort of use that same look and feel so that everything's on brand, everything's cohesive. That's
a critical piece of getting that connected piece of, well, I'm seeing some great, social caught by the team, but it has the same look and feel when you're then seeing the ad, to seeing the same, look and messaging when you're seeing the billboard. It really helps you as a marketer to know that you've got the support of the content and the look and the feel for the whole season that sort of weaves into what you're trying to do from a marketing message.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, somewhere at one point has done studies on this, and I couldn't quote them, but you start to, it's like ad recall, right? But it's everything recall. If everything has sort of a similar look and feel, you might have gotten an email and never clicked on it. You might have seen a TV spot or a Hulu spot and not really paid much attention, but that mall sign that you saw might have been that last factor. And so you're seeing multiple impressions and multiple phases of your life that all kind of look and feel the same, that are all resonating a similar emotion or a similar feeling, or at least similar messaging to hopefully convey that feeling. And then hopefully that helps drive interest and you go, oh, I think I saw that once, as opposed to having a different TV spot than a different billboard than a different, direct mail piece, et cetera. So yeah, there's somebody way more philosophical than I have studied that in terms of how the human brain works, but I feel like that all kind of plays an important factor there.
It definitely does. One of the last ones we're going to do, is there a particular, like we've sort of discussed how there is new platforms coming along, is there a particular ad product, ad platform that you're maybe playing around with now, or it's still in the early phase, that's exciting you?
Yeah, so I know you asked earlier, like, how do you make that determination of what platform you use for what kind of campaign? And I think a lot of it depends on who we believe is our target audience. One of the things that our team handles is esports. So our esports content that we put out there is going to be a whole different platform and audience and target than sort of our season ticket holder base, which is much older than the kids that are gaming. And so from my perspective, I kind of geek out on multiple sides of that, right? It's the esports side of it is relatively new, and it's a venture that I feel very strongly about. From a hockey perspective, there tends to be a lot of barriers of entry, right, to the sport. It's expensive. Ice is hard to find, especially in Southern California. It's not like you can just walk outside and skate. It takes a physical toll. And so a lot of, especially with our organization doing such a great job of fan development, youth involvement, we're in hundreds of schools in and around our area in terms of education and physical education and teaching science and hockey, that to me, having an esport component might help a kid understand the sport without ever needing to pick up a stick physically himself or herself. That you can create new fans in that way. So utilizing the social channels that they're drawn to. TikTok is a big one. And I know that's a cliche answer at this point, but it's kind of true. I mean, there's more kids younger paying attention to TikTok than I think there are older people paying attention to Meta. So if you're talking about fan development and getting people interested in your brand and your product, that might not work necessarily for a direct sale, right? Especially given that the audience is younger, it's a different type of vehicle. But to me, that interest in that kind of content that kind of strays away from your typical cool guy dangled between the legs and shot at top of goal. Yeah, buy tickets. Like it's you're able to create a more human side of the brand and the organization. We have guys on our roster that consider themselves gamers. So tying that into some of that content, putting that out there, is something that, we're kind of in the early stages of seeing. We're experimenting with some different content and how we're able to drive leads or sales through that. But in terms of engagement and eyeballs and overall awareness of our brand to a new and a unique audience, to me, that's kind of one of the big ones at this point.
Terrific. I mean, TikTok is one that I'm always interested in talking to marketers about. Like, it's still a newer platform. It's got a completely different focus where they say, oh, we're not a social network, we're an entertainment network. We're like Netflix. People just open it and start watching things. And so it's a complete different shift to all of the other social platforms that came along, which was tell the story of your team. And it's like, well, hang on, people don't want to score a result on TikTok. They want, that human interest piece. But I wanted to ask you as a marketer, when platforms like TikTok start rising to the attention that they require the attention of a team, do you then start looking at what does the ad product do? What can I do in the ad product? How does it report? What are the best creatives? Like, one, how do you do it, and how do you sort of encourage your team to, ask the marketing coordinator in your team to say, what do you guys think? How is it working? How do you sort of get that group learning for a new platform, whether it be what content is working, but then also looking at the, a still being developed ad product. Like, it feels like they're building it on the fly. How do you dive into a new product like that?
Yeah, and I'm dating myself here because I feel like where TikTok is now and its exploratory ad product. It's kind of where some of these other founded products were kind of when I started. So it's got a very similar feeling to, okay, we don't quite know how this is going to work, but we know where we sell things. We know that we need to connect that to that point where there needs to be some sort of tracking and some mechanism. And whether it's not in the platform itself, then we have to either link out or create inroads to be able to discern whether or not this is being effective from a business standpoint, right? From a content perspective, it's really doing the research. And I think our organization is great because you have people like myself who have been here 10 years, and there's even people that have been here 20 or 30 years that are out there looking at content. But then there's also people that just graduated undergrad that are here. And so kind of combining everybody's resources and awareness and what they're using and what they're watching and whether they have kids or not and how that relates to their spending habits. And you kind of use your own internal people as sort of the guinea pigs of, would this resonate to you? Hey, check with your kids, check with your kids' friends. And then you look at what trends are popular outside of your own walls, and you kind of think, okay, you know, and I'm a dad. I have 2 little ones, so a lot of my TikTok things that I watch are of parenting or babies. And for a while there was this trend of throwing deli meats or cheeses on babies' foreheads and watching their reactions. And so it's like, okay, could that be popular with our audience? I don't know, but put a duck logo on cheese and throw it on a baby's head and see if it sticks. Not that that's something that we actually ran, but that's sort of the idea, right? Is you look at what's popular with people and you kind of think, okay, how could that fit with what we're trying to do? How does that fit with the types of audiences that we're trying to reach or the messaging that we're trying to reach, and how do we best convey what we're trying to sell ultimately, right, to an audience that likes this or that watches this or consumes this type of content. And so it's a bit collaborative and it's a bit trial and error too. I mean, I don't know that anybody has the right answer in that regard. I mean, it's dependent on so many different factors that you just kind of have to test a few things. And that's when I go back to that kind of testing. You set aside some budget, you try different campaigns, you A/B test and maybe ABCDE test, and kind of figure out what's working best. And then you take those learnings and you kind of evolve in that process, because nobody's going to get it right all the time right off the bat.
And I think there's real advantage in being early in testing those pieces, because like as the ad product develops, and I think, I think a lot of the ad products for a lot of the platforms are literally just copying what Meta has done because it has worked. So there's a lot of similarity in how the ads are structured and what they're trying to do. It's like, well, there's no new ideas here. But it's also how that behavior changes, because there was for a long time, Instagram was a walled garden. No one ever left. There was never any links. No one ever, it's like, oh, don't send them anywhere because they love being in the app. And then stories again was stolen from TikTok, and then it's like, oh, hang on, we're now driving traffic, and a lot of traffic is happening. And so then the ad product was there, and people will just go, oh yeah, I see something cool, I do want to click on it. So it's going to be interesting to see how that the TikTok audience takes to that. But then when you also, you look at some of the really good content creators that are launching things that are doing great things on that platform, they are selling, bucket loads. I was going to swear, but I didn't. Of merchandise and those kind of things off TikTok, either via organic, but then savvily using ads to promote it. So it's going to be interesting to see how that, I guess, evolution of the content develops.
Yeah, and I mean, even TikTok itself is using itself as its own marketing piece, right? Like I saw it on TikTok, right? So it's like it's a pretty interesting dynamic and socioeconomic research project to those of us who have been in this a while, of like, where is this going? How is this? Is this real life right now? Is this going to be the thing?
It is a bit that way, but also that you've got to cast that wide net amongst your team to go, because everyone's For You page is different. So it's like, well, we what are other people seeing that I'm not seeing? and what is working, whether it be a tactic or a content piece, is really interesting.
And I think it'll get to that kind of same point, right, that we were talking about earlier with some of our, we take certain segments based on who we know or what we know about them and what they've been doing with their own brand, and we try to produce that content to fit that slice of the pie. We're way past this message, this content is going to work for everybody. It's just we're so far past that that platform specifically is one where you might put out 10 different videos and it would resonate with 10 different types of people and it would all be effective. So yeah, it's really, I think it's kind of more, it's a big TBD, is really what it is. We don't have a full season under our belts of reporting and metrics, so I can't really speak to the performance angle of it, but I can tell you from an engagement standpoint, it's been pretty cool. And the way that we talk about content is so different platform by platform. And that one specifically is like, okay, we're not going to just show hockey highlights there. We're going to show our guys being silly and being human and kind of, breaking down that traditional wall of like consumer to sport team or consumer to professional athlete that kind of went away a little bit with Twitter, but even then it's still more of like a message board. It's not, people love visuals, right? And so it's going to be very interesting, I think, in the next couple years of how that evolves. A little bit scary, but I think it'll be really cool.
Definitely. Well, Jim, thank you very much for coming on. I want to finish with the Sports Geek closing five. Sure. Do you remember the first sports event you ever attended?
I don't remember it because I was 2, but it was a San Diego Chargers football game. My parents were season ticket holders. We've been going to sporting events my entire life. It started with the Chargers and then the Padres, and it escalated from there to the point where we would do vacation trips around professional sporting events. And it's one of the things I look for anytime I go out of town on business or we go anywhere on vacation is who's playing in the area. So yeah, it was a San Diego Chargers game, and I could not tell you who they were playing, but I was that little kid in the pretend football uniform that could barely walk, and that was my childhood, was growing up at sporting games.
True. Well, you've obviously been to a lot of sports events. Is there a favorite food memory or a go-to food when you're at a sports event?
I'm a foodie by nature. I love food. I am thankful I don't weigh 900 pounds because I love food that much. And so I think, to me, I don't have a go-to food that I get every single time that I go to a game. It's all dependent upon the area and what their specialties are. What do their menus look like? Is there something that I can get from this venue that I can't get anywhere else? Texas has a lot of that at their sporting events, where you could get like a 35-foot hot dog that has all these toppings on it, or different kind of desserts. Where that's what I look for when I go to a game, is what's unique enough, and what's anybody can get a hot dog, anybody can get Cracker Jacks, but what can I get while I'm here? Philly, right? Philly cheesesteaks. There's seafood elements in New England. There all that stuff. So that's kind of my go-to, is I look for the unique.
It is definitely part of the modern sports experience. That again, the same as we've got more advertising platforms, we've definitely got more gourmet options at sports events these
days. Absolutely.
What's the first app you open in the morning?
Ooh, it's very dependent on the day. I would say a lot of times it's Teams or email to see if anything has caught on fire overnight. But in terms of casual app usage, I would say either Instagram or TikTok.
Terrific. Is there someone that you follow, whether they be someone online or an author or an authority or something, that the podcast listeners should follow, and why?
I consume content from a lot of different places, so it would be hard for me to pick just one. But if the podcast listeners are looking for something fun to check out, they should check out Duckstream. We've gotten rid of our terrestrial radio, our traditional radio, and we've gone to TuneIn, and we do podcasts. We have Eat 'em Up. One of our former Ducks players has his own segment where he has special guests and it dives into our organization. And I think it's pretty unique. I don't know a lot of teams that are doing that right now. So I encourage everybody to check out Duckstream and the elements that come within that. It's a 24/7 area where our fans can get content. So that's a shameless plug, but that's where I would encourage people to go.
Terrific.
To go tune into.
Not a problem at all. Lastly, and you can answer this personally, and then you can answer it as a marketer. But what social media platform is your MVP?
From a personal standpoint, non-professionally, I am a fan of TikTok currently, just because of the content that I can get from it. From a marketing standpoint and what we've seen the most success for over the past several years, it's been Meta. But I could see that shifting potentially. But it's still a pretty big driver and leads in revenue for us. And that's our MVP currently.
Terrific. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate you catching up. What is the best platform or the best way for people who have listened to this podcast who want to geek out a little bit more about digital and advertising and those kind of things? What's the best way for people to reach out to you?
Reach out to me. You can find me on LinkedIn through g.m. My last name is Ciallella, or they can shoot me an email, gmciallella@anaheimducks.com, and I'd be happy to chat with anybody and everybody.
Well, thank you very much, Jim. I really do appreciate it. And if those people who do reach out to you say that you've listened to the podcast, so then he knows you're not just some random coming off the internet. But thank you very much, and hopefully next time I'm in your part of the world, we can catch up for a beer.
Absolutely. We'd be happy to have you. Let us know anytime, and we'll hopefully get you to a game here soon.
Learn from the Sports Geek Amplify Season 2 cohort. Trajectory, Xtonet, SeatGeek, Sponsor CX, and Stats Perform. For more, go to sportsgeekamplify.com.
Thanks again to GM Ciallella. You can find links to connect with GM on LinkedIn at the show notes, and they are hosted on sportsgeekhq.com/354. Any particular episode, you'll be able to find at sportsgeekhq.com. You obviously would have gathered from my conversation with GM, I love this stuff, and really for me, emphasize the importance of understanding your digital plumbing and getting all the pieces of the puzzle digitally set up on your website, in the website back end. Understand where that traffic's coming from, understand where your advertising spend is going, and understand that your advertising spend is actually working. As GM said, having a real strong revenue focus is one of the reasons he's been able to build out the capacity of his team, and also some of the things that they've been able to tackle, whether it be new platforms or new advertising products that come along. So some of the places that we really like working with teams and leagues, but also just getting things structurally sound. And some of them are from a security point of view. Are your digital assets secure? What would you do if you were to lose some of your social platforms? How can you go about best securing them? So understanding those risks, but then also what you can do to secure them, making sure that someone unauthorized does not get access to your social accounts and causes untold brand damage. But then also, like Jim was talking about, how do you make sure that if you are spending money, or if you are spending money on content and efforts and digital efforts, how can you track to see how they are working? And so, especially now that the cookie crunch is on, we spoke about it a little bit with iOS and Google starting to reduce the effectiveness and the ability to remarket and use pixels on sites and the like. What can you do to take advantage of what is available, and how can you, what is the next version of remarketing? How can you re-engage your fans that have been watching videos or engaging with your assets for those revenue outcomes, whether they be ticketing, whether they be season tickets, whether they be merchandise. It's something that I still geek out about. If it is something that either you've got working in-house or you're offloading it to an agency, which many do, sometimes it's good to get a little bit of an audit on how your assets are working, are they secure, and effectively keep sometimes your agencies honest, to have some of that knowledge to ask the right questions. if you're happy to, if you want to know more about how you can boost your efforts from an organic point of view, how you can leverage paid, and then what you can do from a paid effort point of view to focus on some real big revenue outcomes, please give me a call or send me an email, Sean@SportsGeekHQ. Thanks again to GM for that chat. I really did enjoy it. Until next episode, my name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to Sports Geek.
Looking to help your digital or sponsorship team? Book in for a Pick My Brain session with Sean Callanan to help your team level up. Book now at sportsgeekhq.com/pickmybrain. Want to help drive more revenue from your digital efforts? Book a time for a call. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/phone call.